The motion picture you're about to witness may startle you. It would not have been possible otherwise to sufficiently emphasize the frightful toll of the new drug menace which is destroying the youth of America in alarmingly increasing numbers. Marijuana is that drug, a violent narcotic, an unspeakable scourge, the real public enemy number one. Its first effect is sudden, violent, uncontrollable laughter. Then comes dangerous hallucinations. Space explodes. Time slows down, almost stands still. Fixed ideas come next, conjuring up monstrous extravagances, followed by emotional disturbances, the total inability to direct thoughts, the loss of all power to resist physical emotions, leading finally to shocking acts of violence, ending often in incurable insanity. In picturing its soul-destroying effects, no attempt was made to equivocate. The scenes and incidents, while fictionalized for the purposes of this story, are based upon actual research into the results of marijuana addiction. If their stark reality will make you think, will make you aware that something must be done to wipe out this ghastly menace, then this picture will not have failed in its purpose, because the dreaded marijuana may be reaching forth next for your son or your daughter, or yours, or yours.
Bomb, ba-bomb, 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 ba-bomb. Scaredy Cat.
Welcome to a special 420 edition of Scaredy Cat. I'm Rob.
And I'm Ash.
On this special quick edition, we're going to take a look at something that, while not necessarily on the surface was a horror film, its original intent was to scare people about something silly. So, we're going to review Reefer Madness real quick from 1936.
Were you aware that this movie was made in the 30s? I always thought that it was made in the 60s or the early 70s.
It's not far-fetched that you think that, because this film was rediscovered in the 70s by a pro-marijuana group.
Wait, a pro-marijuana group?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Okay.
Let's go back to 1936 real quick.
Okay. The year of its 1936.
The president is Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
Okay.
The cost of a house is $3,000 roughly.
Jesus Christ. We could buy a house right now.
Would you like to guess how much gas cost?
5 cents a gallon.
Ooh, close. 10 cents a gallon.
Mm.
I know it's hard to believe, but in the 30s, white people were afraid of black people.
What?
White people were afraid of brown people.
What?
White people were afraid of anything that wasn't white people.
What? I'm shocked. I'm shocked at white people.
So you were telling me about marijuana stance before the 30s.
Yes. So the United States has a very weird history with pot, or with hemp specifically. So between the 1600s and the 1800s, production of hemp was encouraged by the government. In 1619, the Virginia Assembly passed legislation requiring every single farmer in the United States to grow hemp on their property. And hemp was actually even allowed to be used and exchanged as legal tender in Pennsylvania, Virginia, and Maryland. In the 19th century, hemp was used in a lot of medicinal products.
What's interesting is that the war on hemp started around the same time that people were really getting freaked out about Hispanic people.
So in 1910, there was the Mexican Revolution, and it caused a huge flood of Mexican immigrants into the United States. And they brought with them marijuana as a recreational drug. And this freaked the fuck out of white people.
The most terrifying thing that they could think of was the fact that marijuana made women more likely to sleep with non-white people.
I mean,
this is what they used to scare the parents.
Right. And also, pot became associated with immigrants in general, and the fear and the prejudice was only compounded in the next 20 or 30 years with the Great Depression. Pot became known as the marijuana menace, and we were attributing horrible violent crimes to pot, and then linking that also with immigrants and people of color in general.
So the federal government had a stake in making marijuana legal, and businesses wanted to make hemp legal so that they could use it.
Right. It was a cheap alternative to a lot of different things. Hemp was used to make rope, it was used to make sails, and it was used to make clothing. And it grows literally anywhere, in any condition.
So this is our backdrop for when this movie came out. A bunch of churches get together and they produce a film called Tell Your Children. And that film makes a circuit around and it kind of dies out. And then a couple of producers who were really into the midnight movie scene in about 1937, they pick it up, they film a few extra scenes, and they add those into it and call it Reefer Madness and hit the midnight movie circuit. Back then, there was no home video market, and they didn't care enough about it to even copyright it. So it just kind of lingered in limbo until the 70s when this pro-marijuana group found it, thought it was hilarious, and they re-released it.
I mean, to be frank, we watched this movie. I'd never actually seen it before. I'd seen bits and pieces of it through like pop culture references and stuff like that. But I'd never actually sat down and watched it. I didn't know that it had an actual plot. It was weird. I mean, we have teenagers wearing suits in the middle of the day. It's mad. I mean, that's all it is.
The poster has a little thing on it that says adults only.
Right.
But the name of the movie was Tell Your Kids. Like the idea was they were going to scare the shit out of the parents.
Right.
They would go home and be like, "Don't you touch that devil weed." And then they would all be okay.
Well, I mean, that still happens now. I mean, on the news, that drug cheese was a big deal.
Yeah.
I mean, we grew up in a town, had a big drug problem.
Fun fact, our hometown had a undercover cop killed in the 80s.
In the high school.
Yeah, the same high school we went to.
Because he was busting up a drug ring, a literal drug ring that was run by 16-year-old high school kids. So cheese, right, was on the news one night. It's a drug. It's like heroin mixed with like Ritalin or something like that. It's something dumb. But I remember very specifically like watching the news with my mom one night and her grilling me for 45 minutes about whether or not I was on cheese. So it still happens. Like, it's still going on. We're still terrifying parents about things that are not a big deal.
I have never done drugs.
You're high on life.
Never been a smoker. Never been a drinker. Neither one of us drink. So why did you want to do a 420 episode?
Well, I don't think that you have to. And listen, like, pot's not a drug. It's just not. It's a drug the same way that, like, alcohol or cigarettes are drugs.
Well, here we are. There's, like, what, 12 states that have legalized it?
Right. I mean, and just
more
because
racking up each day.
we don't do it doesn't mean that I see anything wrong with it. I just choose not to do it.
Anything that gets demonized for no reason or for the wrong reasons, you kind of get a soft spot for.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, I don't see the need for the hysteria that surrounds it. I mean, pot is a Schedule 1 narcotic, which means that it's found to have no medicinal benefit. It is just a straight up bad for you drug, which is not true. And there's a huge opioid epidemic in New Jersey, and people are dying every single day. Pot is not that. And just because I don't smoke it doesn't mean that I think that nobody else should be allowed to either.
Why don't we get into the cast here?
First up, we have Mary.
Mary Lane, played by Dorothy Short.
She is kind of our good girl. They also spelled marijuana really weird.
Marijuana.
It was weird.
Had an H in it.
Like, they were refusing to use, like, any sort of Spanish spelling. And so they were spelling it as, like, Anglican as humanly possible. All right, so next up we have Bill.
Bill Harper, played by Kenneth Craig.
He is our Boy Scout turned band.
Yes, he's our corrupted youth.
Yes. Then we have Blanche.
Played by Lillian Miles,
I honestly don't remember who she was in the film.
the lady who ran the thing.
I love that name, Blanche. Next up we have Ralph.
This is the guy who is running the den.
Okay. All right, next up we have May.
Played by Thelma White.
And May was the lady who was running the pot den.
Oh. Then who was Blanche?
I don't know. Oh, I think Blanche was the floozy blonde. I'm not saying she's a floozy. I'm just saying that's what her character was in the film.
And then you have drug ring boss. That was his whole name.
Drug ring boss.
Walter McGrail.
Oh, well, right. Because they're trying to say that, like,
it was like a mafia
the
thing.
pot is coming out of the mob, but the mob, like, has an office that you just walk into.
There's a desk.
In the middle of a room, you just walk in unannounced, and
There's
you're like...
till.
You're like, hey, man with a calculator, a 10-key calculator, can I please have some more pot?
Yeah, it's like a till.
But
and
they weren't...
Just, all day long, he's just hitting the numbers on the till.
Did you notice they never referred to it as, like, marijuana? They always called it...
He was very euphemistic about everything. What I wanted to mention about the cast is that these people were actual actors and actresses. They were loaned out from RKO Pictures to do this film.
Right, because this is when studios still really owned actors. Right, like pimps.
We start off with a man standing in front of like a PTA meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And he's telling the audience how terrible marijuana is.
Right, like a room full of white parents. All the ladies are wearing, like, hats, like nice hats. You know what I've always wondered? If it's a rule that when a man walks into a building, he has to take off his hat, or like when you sit down to dinner or to talk to someone, you have to take off your hat. Do women not have the same hat rule?
I'm not prepared to answer that question. It could also be regional.
It could be. We have more manners in the South. So basically what happens is we meet a young couple, Mary and Bill. And they are goofy in love. He's reciting Romeo and Juliet to her. They kiss on an outdoor couch. He falls into a pond. It's adorable. But he wore those wet pants for a long time.
Yes, because he was at home chasing his brother around.
Nicely. Like, everything is nice. Everything's, like, upbeat. You were talking about how fucking old his parents looked.
Yes, because they have, like, a 6-year-old kid, maybe a 10-year-old. But they've got to be in their 60s.
No, I think they were probably in their 30s. People just aged faster back then.
No.
They didn't have moisturizer.
His wrinkles were hanging to the floor.
No. They were probably in their 30s or their 40s. People aged fast back then.
So Jack and May have a drug den. May sells drugs to adults, and Jack sells drugs to kids. She doesn't like the fact that he sells it to kids.
May is upset that he's selling pot to kids. Which, I mean, did you ever see any money exchange hands?
I want to know, did you ever see any kids?
No, these were adults.
All the people in this film were at least 20 years old.
They were wearing suits.
Mary Lane's brother has gotten involved with this
drug den.
This sinful den of drugs. And marijuana.
Drugs and sex.
Where the piano is too fast. All they ever do is dance.
But I mean, to be fair, like, that's what they were legitimately afraid of. And I think the dancing...
The jitterbug.
I think the dancing specifically scares people because you sort of lose your inhibitions. Like, in order to dance freely like that, you have to, like...
There was nothing free about the dancing in this movie.
No, I think it absolutely was.
It was the whitest of white dances.
No, that's how...
Performed in the whitest of white ways.
That's how white people danced in the 30s.
They can't see it right now, but I got my finger wagging in the air. I'm doing my flapper dance.
That was the thing, though.
The idea that shocked somebody blows my mind. Also, nobody understood how marijuana, like, you actually smoke marijuana in this film, because all they did was, like, puff, and they did, like, the cartoon style puffing.
Well, they were smoking it like cigarettes. And then there's the piano player
who
like,
he's got like 6 or 7 cigarettes in his mouth at once.
Held it with like 2 hands and like shook and
he's got the crazy
twirled his eyes around. It was pretty interesting.
Bill Harper gets invited to this den. Mary Lane's boyfriend, and we should add in.
Does Young Frankenstein count as that?
We should add in the sound of horses in the background neighing. And he has sexual relations with one of the den mates.
With a young woman. And I mean, this is very Adam and Eve original sin, right? So this
Marijuana was involved then too.
No, it wasn't.
I bet it was.
The floozy that we talked about from the beginning, the blonde chick, I can't remember her name right now. She convinces Bill to go to this sin den.
Mm.
And when they get there, she sits him down on the couch.
Strip teases him.
She snuggles with him. She's the one who puts the... They keep calling it a cigarette.
Reefer.
In his mouth.
What was it? They keep referring it to as a reefer stick?
Yeah. She lights it. She tells him how to smoke it. She gets him high. She starts making out with him. She drags him to the bedroom. She instigates the sex. This is full original sin, like Adam and Eve shit.
Yeah, but it also has your typical male dominance bullshit too.
No, it doesn't.
It does when Ralph is out there and he sees her.
Oh, yeah, that. But, like, this is full on, like, his descent into all of this.
Yeah,
Bill's descent into Reefer Madness is fucking led by a blonde-haired girl who leads him astray. He had no say in the whole thing, right? It was all just her taking advantage of him, leading him down the wrong path. He was a good boy. He knew what was right and wrong. He knew all of these things. But he let this woman take advantage of him. He let her lead him astray.
While she's in there giving him the business, Mary Lane shows up.
Yes.
At the den, and Ralph takes advantage of her, Ralph, who's...
He's kind of an older guy that hangs around.
He looks like a young Vladimir Putin.
He's kind of hot.
You're saying you like Vladimir Putin?
No,
Vladimir Putin's
he's not hot, but this guy's kind of hot. He's like 1930s hot.
Anyway, all he's been doing this whole film is sitting in a chair and laughing.
He's an older guy that hangs around with high school kids.
See,
and we all know a guy from high school that was older than us. We know one specifically who was significantly older than us that still hung around with high school kids. And he was pretty fucking creepy. If there are any high school aged kids that are listening to this, first of all, go to bed. Second of all...
Wait, why are you assuming they're listening to this? What if it's morning time when they're listening to this?
Well,
I'm sorry, Mom. The podcast told me I have to go back to bed.
You have a young brain. You need lots of sleep. But also, if you're a high school kid and some, like, 19, 20, 21-year-old person is like... Yeah, I love hanging out with you guys and is super enthusiastic about chilling with a whole bunch of fucking 16, 17, 18-year-old high school kids. Fucking run. That person is a weirdo.
So Ralph tries to take advantage of, or does. I can't...
He doesn't rape her, right? But he assaults her. Oh, but we forgot to tell you, he got her high to begin with. He asked her if she wanted to smoke. She assumed it was a regular cigarette, not wacky tobacco, and she smoked it, instantly got giggly high, because that's how it works. He grabs her, she starts trying to push him off, he, like, starts ripping open the back of her dress. It's really, like, it's very uncomfortable to watch. It's silent. There's no music, there's no moving cameras, all you hear is the struggle, and it's creepy as fuck.
I will say, up to this point, this whole film has been nothing but dancing.
It's just been silly.
People giggling, like nothing serious has happened.
And then it gets dark, and it just throws it in there like it's just fodder. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't take the assault seriously.
Even when he comes back out of the room, he misinterprets the scene
as her undressing for
Ralph.
Him. So it's not even like he's seeing her being assaulted. He's basically hallucinating her undressing for this other dude. It's very strange.
Yeah. So Ralph and Billy Harper get in a fight. It's broken up by Jack, the owner, and Jack accidentally shoots Mary Lane.
Right.
He then, because Billy's knocked unconscious.
Because he pistol whips Billy.
Right.
He's breaking up the fight between Ralph and Billy. During that, he accidentally shoots Mary Lane
Mhm.
because his gun discharges. He's got it in his hand for some reason. And as soon as that happens, he pistol whips Billy and tells Ralph to move out of the way or whatever.
And then he frames Billy.
Right. He puts the gun in Billy's hand, wakes him up, and Billy's like, "Oh my God, what did I do?"
Billy gets put on trial, gets found guilty, and they're going to hang him.
Hang him?
Yeah, that's what they kept talking about. Even in the scene where you're seeing them, it goes in the jurors' room, and you can see them debating it, and he sees that swinging lamppost turns into a noose.
Were we still hanging people in the 30s?
I don't know, but they were gonna hang the dude.
Oh my God.
So they're gonna hang him, but Ralph is having a tough time with this whole situation. He really, really thinks that he should tell somebody.
Yes, he should.
So Jack is going to kill Ralph before he can, but Ralph gets the upper hand, knocks him unconscious, and kills him. Then the police come in because a neighbor who hasn't heard all the piano music or the crazy tumbling
Or the
and dancing
gunshots.
or anything up to this point hears the gunshots and calls the cops. Cops come in immediately because apparently they had nothing else going on in the 30s.
They had a lot going on.
They arrest everybody, and they declare Ralph as criminally insane because of the wacky tobacco. Because of the ganja, he is criminally insane. Now, that is actually based on a true story, though. Ralph represents a guy named Victor Licata. Victor Licata was a 20-year-old Floridian who happened to live 2 blocks away from the IKEA in Tampa.
Are you being serious?
Yeah, Ybor.
Oh.
Back in the 1920s.
Ybor is a place in Tampa where when we first got there, we were told not to go because it was very, very dangerous.
Mm.
Turns out it's not that dangerous anymore, but it used to be. Like in the 90s, it was some pretty rough shit.
Well, in 1933, Victor Licata, he killed his entire family with an axe. And the police jumped on rumors of the fact that he was a habitual marijuana user. And they started using this as the main reason for him doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't matter that 2 weeks later, a psychiatric examination would reveal that he was diagnosed as criminally insane. It didn't stop the Licata case from becoming a propaganda piece.
I could see that, yeah.
And a lot of legislators used it to justify the legislation being passed.
What? You mean U.S. legislators would use something that was blown entirely out of proportion and unsubstantiated for their benefit? What?
It was the key case that was propagandized for the passage of the Federal Marijuana Tax Act of 1937 that effectively outlawed legal sale of the demon weed.
You can't see my face, but I have a shocked face.
Billy Harper has his sentence commuted. Mary's still dead. She doesn't come back.
Right, yeah. She's never resurrected. We
go back to the town hall where the guy is having the PTA meeting, and he sums up everything by saying, the demon weed has done us all. And he looks at the crowd and he says, it could be your child or your child. And he looks directly at the camera and he says, or your child. And he points at it. And that's how the movie ends.
It's so fucking bonkers the way that we've handled a lot of things, but like weed in particular.
This movie was less fun to watch than I thought it would be.
Not fun at all. It's slow. It's sad. It
was like watching an episode of Andy Griffith.
Without the music.
Or the comedy.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to recommend anybody watch this film. We're not even going to do the ratings on this one.
Right.
But I will say there is a film out there called Reefer Madness 2, The True Story, where a group of people overdubbed all the dialogue from this film. And from the pieces I saw, it looks hysterical.
It's much better.
It may be better to just watch that one.
Wasn't there actually a musical made out of this also?
2005 saw Reefer Madness, the musical.
With Kristen Bell?
We haven't seen that one either. Maybe we'll do that one next year
Ugh.
on 420.
And now it's just turned into a joke. And the whole movement was just, honestly, just based in racism and fear.
But it's something that's been passed on to generations, and I guarantee you probably have somebody in your family that still sees marijuana this way, and you can think of them offhand. With that, remember, it could be your child.
Or yours.
Or yours.
Or yours.